What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's CyberSecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I have broken them down in the timeline so you can jump around to any story you see fit. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button. And if you have not already, please consider subscribing to my channel.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off today with patches. Cisco addressed 3 vulnerabilities tracked as CVE 2022-20777, 20779, and 20780 affecting the Enterprise NFV infrastructure software that could be exploited by attackers to take control over the hosts. Multiple vulnerabilities in Cisco Enterprise NFV infrastructure software could allow an attacker to escape from the guest virtual machine to the host machine, inject commands that execute at the root level, or leak system data from the host to the VM, reads the advisory published by Cisco. So an attacker could exploit these vulnerabilities to, again, escape from the virtual machine to the host machine, execute commands as root, and or leak system data from the host to the VM. The 3 vulnerabilities fixed by the IT giant are 20777 with a CVSS score of 9.9, which is a vulnerability in the next generation input-output feature of Cisco Enterprise NFVIS that could allow an authenticated remote attacker to escape from the guest VM to gain unauthorized root level access of the NVFIS host. Then there's 20779 with a CVSS score of 8.8. Then a vulnerability in the image registration process of Cisco Enterprise NFVIS could allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to inject commands that execute at the root level on the NFVIS host during the image registration process. Then there's 2780 with a CVSS score of 7.4, and that's a vulnerability in the import function of Cisco Enterprise NFVIS that could allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to leak system data from the host to any configured VM. The vulnerabilities were reported by Cyril Chatraz, Pierre Dunois, and Loic Ristor of Orange Group. The Cisco Product Security Incident Response Team said that it is not aware of any public announcements or malicious use of these vulnerabilities. Google has released the second part of the May Security Bulletin for Android, which includes a fix for an actively exploited Linux kernel vulnerability tracked to CVE 2021-22600. The CVE 2021-22600 is a privilege escalation issue that resides in the Linux kernel. An attacker can trigger it via local access. In April, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency added the flaw to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Google disclosed the flaw in January, but it was addressed for Android OS only this month. There are indications that CVE 2021-22600 may be under limited targeted exploitation, reads the bulletin published by Google. The company did not disclose the details of the attacks exploiting for this flaw. The bulletin addressed 5 flaws in the framework, 8 in the system, 4 in the kernel components, 3 in MediaTek components, 5 in the Qualcomm components, and 11 in the Qualcomm closed source components. QNAP has addressed multiple vulnerabilities, including a critical security issue tracked as CVE 2022-27588 with a CVSS score of 9.8 that could be exploited by a remote attacker to execute arbitrary commands on vulnerable QVR systems. QNAP QVR is a video surveillance solution of the Taiwanese vendor, which is hosted on its NAS devices and doesn't require any extra software. The list of other issues addressed by the vendor: CVE 2021-44057, which is a high-severity vulnerability in QNAP NAS photo station that could allow attackers to compromise the security of the system; CVE 2021-44051 with high severity, which is a command injection flaw in the QTS, QUTS Hero, and QUTS Cloud; CVE 2021-44052, also high severity. It's a link resolution flaw in QTS, QUTS Hero, and QUTS Cloud; 2021-44053, again high severity, cross-site scripting flaw in QTS, QUTS Hero, and QUTS Cloud; 44054, again high severity, open redirect vulnerability in QTS, QUTS Hero, and QUTS Cloud. Then there's 38693 with medium severity. It's path traversal vulnerability in the HTTPD in QTS, QTS Hero, and QUTS Cloud. Then there's 44055 and 44056, both with medium severity. Vulnerabilities affecting QNAP NAS running certain versions of Video Station. If exploited, these vulnerabilities allow remote attackers to access sensitive data, perform unauthorized actions, and compromise the security of the system. We now move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. Threat actors stole more than $80 million from the decentralized finance platforms Rari Capital and Fei Protocol on Saturday. Researchers from smart contract analysis firm BlockSec reported that attackers exploited a re-entrancy bug in Rari's Fuse lending protocol. Rari Capital paused borrowing globally in response to the hack and ensured that all other funds are secure. According to CoinDesk, Fei Protocol, which merged last December with Rari, offered two crooks behind the hack a $10 million bounty if they will return the stolen funds. The Fei Protocol development team runs a decentralized stablecoin called Fei USD. Researchers from blockchain security firm PeckShield confirmed that the same reentrancy vulnerability exploited in the cyber heist was also used to target forks of the Compound DeFi protocol. The attacks against the DeFi protocol are increasing. PeckShield researchers reported that as of May 1st, 2021, the exploits have netted $1.57 billion from DeFi. In mid-January 2022, security researchers from Mandiant have spotted a spear phishing campaign launched by the Russian-linked APT39 group on targeting diplomats and government entities. The Russian-linked APT29 group, aka SVR, aka Cozy Bear, aka the Dukes, has been active since at least 2014, along with APT28. Cyber espionage group was involved in the Democratic National Committee hack and the wave of attacks aimed at the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. The messages used in the recent campaign, uncovered by Mandiant, are sent from compromised email addresses belonging to embassies. The phishing emails masqueraded as administrative notices related to various embassies. Nation-state actors used Atlassian, Trello, Dropbox, and cloud services as part of their command and control infrastructure. The experts observed multiple waves of attacks between January 2022 and March 2022. APT29 targeted large lists of recipients that Mandiant suspected were primarily publicly listed points of contact of embassy personnel. These phishing emails utilized a malicious HTML dropper tracked as a root saw that makes use of a technique known as HTML smuggling to deliver an image or ISO file to a victim system, reads the analysis published by Mandiant. The messages used the HTML smuggling technique to deliver an image or ISO file to the victims. The ISO image contains a Windows shortcut file or link that executed an embedded malicious DLL file when clicked. Upon opening the attachment, the root saw HTML dropper will write an image or ISO file to a disk. The image file contains a Windows shortcut file and a malicious DLL. Once the link file is clicked, the malicious DLL is executed. To trick the victim into clicking the link, attackers used a fake icon to trick the victim into believing that the file is legitimate. Once executed, the DLL, the beat drop downloader, is delivered and executed in memory. Experts also reported that APT29 replaced beat drop with a new C++ beacon loader based on Cobalt Strike. The beacon implements backdoor capabilities, including a bunch like screenshots, key logging, harvesting account credentials, exfiltrating data, port scanning, and more. Once a foothold is gained in the target network, APT29 quickly attempts to escalate privileges. In some cases, the attackers were able to gain domain admin in less than 12 hours from the phishing attack. Once the threat actors have established access, they perform extensive reconnaissance of hosts and the Active Directory environment. The APT group was also observed conducting on-host reconnaissance to harvest credentials. During this phishing campaign, the APT29 group was observed utilizing multiple malware families, including BeatDrop, BoomMC, loaders, rootsaw, dropper, HTML files, and beacon backdoor. A man living in Russia, whom the U.S. government accused of being involved in multiple REvil ransomware attacks, may be involved in a phony emergency disclosure request to Twitter used to threaten a ransomware researcher in recent weeks and force them offline. Twitter's policies state the company will provide account information to law enforcement in response to a valid emergency disclosure request. The quickest and most efficient method, the company says, is through its legal request submission site. Twitter received 12,370 government information requests between January and June 2021, the latest period for which that is available, with emergency requests making up about 15% according to the data posted to the company's site. The disclosure request was just one part of an ongoing and escalating series of threats against researchers and at least one blogger by a cybercriminal known as Lalar2 or Sheriff, or someone trying to pose as them, nicknames that security researchers in the past have tied to Alexandra Sikarin. Federal prosecutors in Texas, said in November 2021 filing that Sikarin was most recently living in St. Petersburg, Russia, and had been an affiliate of the notorious REvil ransomware crew. This person has in recent weeks threatened a blogger and their family, and also threatened a cybersecurity researcher with planting articles accusing the researcher of being a pedophile. In an online chat with CyberScoop, a person claiming to be Cicarin said they've been threatening the researchers and the blogger because they make his work harder, and because the person said they hate Americans. The person claimed without proof that recent allegations that Cicarin is also Lalartu and sheriff are true. I hate Americans and I also hate researchers, they said, referring to information security researchers who focus on ransomware activities. I hate when they waste my time during negotiations. Makes me want to throw the decryption key away, you know? The person offering no proof said they worked with an American affiliate using a stolen government email to fake a death threat from the person associated with the Twitter account IDO_Cohen2, a researcher who regularly tweeted about ransomware incidents and operated the darkfeed.io ransomware monitoring website. Twitter fell for the bait and gave up all his info. On April 30th, a thread posted to a dark web forum under the username Rich the Kid detailed what they claimed was a step-by-step on how to create and submit an emergency disclosure request to Twitter. The instructions included a section on faking an emergency, saying that the user has kidnapped someone or they are part of a criminal group and they extort children. To be honest, I don't care. Just make sure it's a good enough story to cause a response, they wrote. The apparent phony data request represents the latest troubling example of hackers and others using compromised government or law enforcement emails to compel major tech companies to turn over users' private data. Twitter has not responded to the multiple requests for comment about the account in question or the emergency disclosure request. The REvil ransomware operation shut down in October 2021. In January, the Russian Federation Security Service announced to have shut down the REvil ransomware gang, the group that is behind a long string of attacks against large organizations such as Kaseya and JBS USA. The FSB claims to have identified all members of the REvil gang and monitored their operations. The police operation was conducted by Russian authorities following a request by the United States that shared info about members of the gang. The Russian police arrested 14 alleged members of the ransomware gang and raided 25 addresses, seizing computer equipment and cryptocurrency wallets. The raids took place in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Leningrad, and Lipetsk regions. The beginning of the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia and the tensions with NATO alliance supporting Kiev was brought about some disturbing changes in the threat landscape. A few weeks later, the REvil Tor infrastructure was up again, but it was redirecting visitors to a new leak site showing a list of new compromised organizations along with past victims of the ransomware gang. The Tor site was also defaced by threat actors, and some experts speculate it was temporarily operated by feds as part of a crime investigation. Last week, the malware researcher Jakub Krostek from Avast discovered a sample of a new REvil encryptor. The expert noticed that the sample does not encrypt files, it only adds a random extension to the victim's files. According to Bleeping Computer, multiple malware researchers discovered new REvil samples that have been compiled from the original source code, but that implement new changes. Bleeping Computer correctly pointed out that the public return of REvil operation is suspicious. The car rental company Sixt detected IT anomalies on April 29, 2022 and immediately activated the incident response procedures. Later, the company confirmed that it was hit by a cyber attack that was quickly contained, but that caused temporary business disruptions at customer care centers and selective branches. As a standard precautionary measure, access to IT systems was immediately restricted and the pre-planned recovery processes were initiated. Many Central Sixt systems, in particular the website and apps, were kept up and running, reads a statement issued by the company. Thereby, impacts on the company, its operations, and services have been minimized to provide business continuity for customers. However, temporary disruptions, in particular in customer care centers and selective branches, are likely to occur in the short term. Sixt launched an investigation into the incident with the help of external forensics experts. The company announced that it will provide further updates as soon as more information is available. Mondiant researchers discovered a new apt group, tracked as UNC3524, that heavily targets the emails of employees that focus on corporate development, mergers and acquisitions, and large corporate transactions. Once initial access is gained to the target systems, UNC3524 deployed a previously unknown backdoor tracked by Mondiant researchers as Quiet Exit. The Quiet Exit backdoor borrows the code from the open-source DropBear SSH client-server software. The threat actors deployed Quiet Exit on network appliances within the target network, including load balancers and wireless access point controllers. These devices often run older versions of BSD or CentOS and would require considerable planning to compile functional malware for them. The experts pointed out that these systems are not protected by security solutions. For this reason, the attackers remain undetected in victim environments for at least 18 months. By targeting trusted systems within victim environments that do not support any type of security tooling, UNC3524 was able to remain undetected in victim environments for at least 18 months. UNC325 also takes persistence seriously. Each time a victim environment removed their access, the group wasted no time recompromising the environment with a variety of mechanisms, immediately restarting their data theft campaign. We are sharing the tools, tactics, and procedures used by UNC3524 to help organizations hunt for and protect against their operations, reads the analysis published by Mondiant. Quietex doesn't support persistence mechanisms. The UNC3524 attackers install a run command as well as hijack legitimate application-specific startup scripts to execute the backdoor on system startup. A China-linked app group tracked as Moshen Dragon has been observed targeting the telecommunications sector in Central Asia with ShadowPad and PlugX malware, Sentinel-1 warns. Both PlugX and ShadowPad malware are very common among China-linked cyber espionage groups. Experts observed overlap between the TTPs of the Moshen Dragon group with the ones of the Chinese Nomad Panda, aka Red Foxtrot. Red Foxtrot has been active since at least 2014 and focused on gathering military intelligence from neighboring countries. It is suspected to work under the PLA China-linked Unit 69010. The researchers state that Moshen Dragon deployed 5 different malware triads to use DLL search order hijacking to sideload ShadowPad and PlugX variants. The cyber espionage group also uses additional tools, including an LSA notification package and the Gunter's passive backdoor. In recent attacks spotted by Sentinel-1, Moshen Dragon leveraged sideload attacks of ShadowPad and PlugX variants. The attackers focused on the hijacking of programs belonging to security vendors, including Symantec, Trend Micro, Bitdefender, McAfee, and Kaspersky. The hijacked DLL are used to decrypt and load the final payload stored in a file residing in the same folder. This combination is recognized as a side-loading triad, a technique commonly associated with Lucky Mouse, continues the company. The way the payloads were deployed, as well as other actions within target networks, suggests the threat actor uses impacket for lateral movement. Upon execution, some of the payloads will achieve persistence by either creating a scheduled task or a service. The analysis of the Moshen Dragon's activity led to the discovery of several payloads uploaded to VirusTotal, some of which were the PlugX Talisman variant. Nozomi Networks warns of a vulnerability tracked as CVE 2022-0502 in the domain name system component of UC libc library, which is used by a large number of IoT products. The flaw also affects DNS implementation of all versions of the UC libc-ng library, which is a fork specifically designed for OpenWRT, a common OS for routers used in various critical infrastructure sectors. An attacker can exploit the vulnerability for DNS poisoning or DNS spoofing and redirect a victim to a malicious website instead of the legitimate one. The flaw is caused by the predictability of transaction IDs included in the DNS requests generated by the library, which may allow attackers to perform DNS poisoning attacks against the target device, reads the advisory published by Nozomi Networks. The UC libc library is used by major vendors, including Linksys, Netgear, and Axis, or Linux distributions such as embedded Gentoo. Security experts did not disclose the details of the flaw because the vendor has yet to address it. The researchers from Nozomi discovered the issue by reviewing the trace of DNS requests performed by an IoT device in their test environment. They were able to determine the pattern of DNS requests performed from the output of Wireshark. The transaction ID is first incremental, then resets to the value 0x2, then is incremental again. The transaction ID of the requests was predictable, a circumstance that could allow an attacker to perform DNS poisoning under certain circumstances. The researchers analyzed the executable and discovered that the problem for the creation of the DNS request resides in the C standard library UC libc version 0.9.32.2. If the OS uses randomization of the source port, the only way to exploit the issue is to brute force the 16-bit source of port value by sending multiple DNS responses while simultaneously winning the race against the legitimate response. Google Threat Analysis Group reported that an APT group linked to China's People's Liberation Army Strategic Support Force, tracked as Curious Gorge, is targeting Russian government agencies. The Google Tag team published a report focused on cybersecurity activity in Eastern Europe. The experts warned that a growing number of threat actors are using the war as a lure in their attacks. The researchers also observed threat actors increasingly targeting organizations in the critical infrastructure. Curious Gorge, a group tag attributes to China's PLA SSF, has remained active against government, military, logistics, and manufacturing organizations in Ukraine. Russia and Central Asia. In Russia, long-running campaigns against multiple government organizations have continued, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, wrote Google Tag security engineer Billy Leonard. Over the past week, Tag identified additional compromises impacting multiple Russian defense contractors and manufacturers and a Russian logistics company. Google Tag also observed Russia-linked APT38, aka Fancy Bear, cyber espionage group targeting users in the Ukraine with a new variant of the .NET malware distributed via email attachments. Inside of password-protected zip files, UA_report.zip, the malware is able to steal cookies and save passwords from Chrome, Edge, and Firefox browsers. The experts also monitored spear phishing attacks conducted by Russia-linked Turla apt aimed at defense and cybersecurity organizations in the Baltics. Russia continues to be one of the most active states. The experts also spotted Cold River, aka Callisto, using Gmail accounts to deliver phishing emails targeting government and defense officials, NGOs, think tanks, and journalists. The ransomware experts linked multiple ransomware strains to North Korea-backed APT38 group. The ransomware was employed in attacks on financial institutions. Experts estimated that APT38, Unit 180 of North Korea's Cyber Army Bureau 121, has stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from banks worldwide. APT38 appears to be a North Korea-linked group separate from the infamous Lazarus group. It has been active since at least 2014, and it has been observed targeting over 16 organizations across 11 countries. Mandiat's report attributed the string of attacks against the SWIFT banking system to the APT38, including the hack of Vietnam's TP Bank in 2015, Bangladesh Central Bank in 2016, Taiwan's Far Eastern International in 2017, Banco Mext in Mexico in 2018, and Banco de Chile in 2018. The investigation of the security firm started with the discovery of VHD ransomware in the threat landscape in March 2020. The Mata malware framework could target Windows, Linux, and macOS operating systems. The experts also tracked the transactions associated with the Bitcoin wallet addresses used by the attackers for ransomware notes, but they did not find any overlap in transfer wallets between the families. They suspect the ransomware families are a part of more organized attacks, concludes according to the blog. Based on their research, combined intelligence, and observations of these smaller targeted ransomware attacks, Trellix attributes them to DPRK affiliated hackers with high confidence. Pro-Ukrainian hackers, likely linked to the Ukraine IT army, are using Docker images to launch distributed denial-of-service attacks against a dozen websites belonging to government, military, and media. The DDoS attacks also targeted 3 Lithuanian media sites. The attacks were monitored by cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, who discovered that the Docker engine honeypots deployed between February 27th and March 1st were compromised and used in the DDoS attacks. The attackers attempt to exploit misconfigured Docker installs through exposed APIs and take them over to abuse their computational resources. The technique to compromise Docker containers is widely adopted by financially motivated threat actors like LemonDuck and Team TNT to abuse their resources and mine cryptocurrencies. The experts noticed that the Docker images target lists overlap with domains shared by the Ukrainian IT army. The attacks involve the 2 images that have been downloaded over 150,000 times, but the threat intelligence firm confirmed that CrowdStrike intelligence cannot determine the exact number of downloads originated from compromised infrastructure. Researchers from CyberReason uncovered a sophisticated cyber espionage campaign dubbed Operation Cuckoo Bees, aimed at stealing intellectual property from victims. The campaign flew under the radar since at least 2019. It was attributed by the experts to the China-linked Winnti group and targeted technology and manufacturing companies primarily located in East Asia, Western Europe, and North America. The attribution to the China-linked app group is based on the analysis of the forensic artifacts. Winnti, aka APT41 Axiom Barium, Blackfly, is a cyber espionage group that has been active since at least 2007. The attacks leverage a multi-step infection chain that starts with attacks on internet-facing servers in the attempt to deploy a web shell used for reconnaissance, lateral movement, and data exfiltration purposes. One of the characteristics of this campaign is the abuse of the Windows CLFS mechanism and NTFS transaction manipulations to conceal their malicious payloads and evade detection by security solutions. The technique was rarely seen in attacks. The threat actors gain access to the target organizations by exploiting vulnerabilities in the organizational ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning platform. Then the attackers achieve persistence with the deployment of the web shell. The attackers abuse the legitimate IKExt and print notify Windows services to sideload Winnti DLLs along with the WinRM protocol for remote access. Once access is gained to the target network, the attackers conducted reconnaissance activity using Windows commands such as systeminfo, netstat, netuser, and directory C. CyberReason observed the threat actors using two methods for credential dumping. The first one used the known regsave command, and the second was an unknown tool named mfsdll.exe. The attackers used the Windows native SCH tasks or search tasks command to create remote scheduled tasks and to execute malicious code in the attempt to perform the lateral movement. The threat actors used a renamed Chinese language version of WinRAR to create a password-protected archive containing the stolen data. Attackers employed the sophisticated modular backdoor called Spider to decrypt and load additional payloads. Security and Application Delivery Solutions provider F5 released its security notification to inform customers that it has released security updates for tens of vulnerabilities in its products. The company addressed a total of 43 vulnerabilities. The most severe one is a critical issue tracked to CVE 2022-1388 with a CVSS score of 9.8. An unauthenticated attacker with network access to the big IP system through the management port and or self-IP address can exploit the CVE 2022-1388 flaw to execute arbitrary system commands, create or delete files, or disable services. The company provided the following temporary mitigations for customers that cannot install the patched versions: block iControl REST access through the self-IP address, block iControl REST access through the management interface, modify the big IP HTTPD configuration. F5 also addressed a couple of other important authentication bypass issues tracked to CVE 2022-25946 and CVE 2022-27806 in Big IP guided configuration and Big IP or ASM, Advanced WAF, and APM. Both vulnerabilities could allow attackers to execute arbitrary JavaScript code in the context of the currently logged in user. Sentinel-1 researcher Kassif Deckel discovered two high-severity security vulnerabilities tracked to CVE 2022-26522 and CVE 2022-26523 that affect a driver used by Avast and AVG antivirus solutions. The bugs reside in the anti-rootkit kernel driver named ASWARPOT.sys, which is the Avast anti-rootkit digitally signed by Avast software. The driver was introduced in Avast version 12.1, which dates back to June 2012. An attacker could exploit these vulnerabilities to escalate privileges and potentially disable antivirus solutions. The vulnerable routine resides in a socket connection handler used in the kernel driver ASWARPOT.sys. The issue can be triggered by initiating a socket connection. The second issue, tracked to CVE 2022-26523, resides in the function at ASWARPOT plus 0xBB94 and is very similar to the first vulnerability. Experts pointed out that the flaws can be exploited to perform a sandbox escape in a second stage browser attack. The flaws were reported by Sentinel-1 on December 20, 2021, and Avast fixed the issues with the release of the antivirus version 22.1 on February 8, 2022. The collective of hacktivists in the Ukraine IT army has launched a series of massive DDoS attacks on the Unified State Automated Alcohol Accounting Information System portal, which is considered crucial for alcohol distribution in Russia. Don't mess with their alcohol, man. Alcohol producers and distributors were not able to ship products due to the unavailability of EGAIS system, and retail points warned of possible shortages due to the current situation. The attacks on the EGAIS websites took place on May 2nd and 3rd, and failures were reported on 4th. A call to action to attack the site was shared within the community of IT Army of the Ukraine. Due to the effects of the attack, factories cannot accept tanks with alcohol, and customers, both stores and distributors, were not able to receive finished products that have already been delivered to them. Many factories halted shipments to warehouses completely and subsequently cut their production rate. Trendmicro researchers uncovered a sophisticated malware framework dubbed NetDooka that is distributed via a pay-per-install service known as Private Loader and includes multiple components including a loader, a dropper, a protection driver, and a full-featured remote access Trojan that implements its protocol for command and control communication. The Private Loader malware is a downloader used by threat actors for downloading and installing multiple malware. Some of the malware families distributed via PPI services include SmokeLoader, Redline, and Anubis. And the attack chain starts with when a user downloads Private Loader, usually through pirated software, when the NetDooka malware is installed to act as a dropper for additional components. The researchers pointed out that the framework is still under development. The loader performs a set of checks to avoid being executed in a virtual environment. It might also install a kernel driver for future use. One of the dropper component analyzed by TreadMicro is the downloaded malware, which is executed by the loader. This dropper is responsible for decrypting and executing the final payload, a rat that implements multiple capabilities such as starting a remote shell, grabbing browser data, taking screenshots, and gathering system information. It can also start the install kernel driver component to protect the dropped payload. The final payload, the NetDooka rat, supports multiple functions as executing shellcodes, performing distributed denial of service attacks, downloading and executing files, logging keystrokes on the infected machine, and performing remote desktop operations. PPI malware services allow malware creators to easily deploy the payloads. The use of a malicious driver creates a large attack surface for attackers to exploit, while also allowing them to take advantage of approaches such as protecting processes and files, bypassing antivirus programs, and hiding the malware or its network communications from the system, among others, concludes the analysis. In February 2022, researchers from Kaspersky spotted a malicious campaign using a novel technique that consists of hiding the shellcode in Windows event logs. The technique allows hiding a fileless Trojan. The experts also noticed that dropper modules also patched Windows native API functions related to event tracing and anti-malware scan interface to avoid detection. The experts discovered that the attackers are hiding encrypted shellcode containing the next stage malware as 8 kilobyte pieces in event logs. The attackers behind this campaign, which likely has been active since September 2021, used different compilers from Microsoft's CL.exe or GCC under MingW to a recent version of Go. Threat actors also used it to sign modules to avoid detection. The attack chain aims at distributing the .rar archives from the legitimate site file.io, which contains Cobalt Strike and Silent Break. Last stagers used two communication mechanisms over HTTP with RC4 encryption and unencrypted with named pipes. Attackers used them to conduct a broad range of malicious activities, including the execution of arbitrary commands, downloading files from a URL, escalating privileges, and taking screenshots. We consider the event logs technique, which we haven't seen before, the most innovative part of this campaign. With at least 2 commercial products in use, plus several types of last stage rat and anti-detection wrappers, the actor behind this campaign is quite capable. There is the possibility that some of the modules we described here are custom ones, are part of a commercial toolset as well. The code is quite unique, with no similarities to known malware. We will continue to monitor the situation, concludes the report. Cybersecurity researchers from Red Canary have spotted a new Windows malware dubbed Raspberry Robin with worm-like capabilities that propagates through removable USB devices. Raspberry Robin is Red Canary's name for a cluster of activity we first observed in September 2021 involving a worm that is often installed via USB drive, reads the advisory published by Red Canary. This activity cluster relies on execute.exe to call out its infrastructure, often comprised QNAP devices using HTTP requests that contain a victim's user and device names. Raspberry Robin uses Windows Installer to reach out to QNAP-associated domains and download a malicious DLL. The malware uses Tor exit nodes as a backup command and control infrastructure. The malware was first spotted in September 2021. The experts observed Raspberry Robin targeting organizations in the technology and manufacturing industries. Initial access is typically through infected removable drivers, often USB devices. Raspberry Robin is typically introduced via infected removable drives, often USB devices. The Raspberry Robin worm often appears as a shortcut.link file, masquerading as a legitimate folder in the infected USB device, continues the analysis. Soon after the Raspberry Robin infected drive is connected to the system, the user assist registry entry is updated and records execution of a ROT13-ciphered value referencing a link file when deciphered. In the example below, Q ERP-BRELYX deciphers to recovery.link. Raspberry Robin uses command.exe to read and execute a file stored on the infected external drive. It leverages execute.exe for external network communication to a rogue domain used as a command and control to download and install a DLL library file. Then msiexec.exe launches a legitimate Windows utility, fodhelper.exe, which in turn runs rundll.32.exe to execute a malicious command. Experts pointed out that processes launched from FODHelper.exe run with elevated administrative privileges without requiring a user account control prompt. According to the researchers looking for FODHelper.exe as a parent process, it is possible to detect the threat. We now move on to other security news. The latest executive order from the Italian National Cybersecurity Agency banned Group IB, a Russian-led cybersecurity company, from working in the government sector, including two other companies, Kaspersky Labs and Positive Technologies. Originally founded in Moscow, the company landed itself into controversy after one of the Group IB employees, Nikita Kizlitsyn, was indicted by the FBI for computer-related crimes, the selling of stolen customer data from major U.S.-based corporations. Kizlitsyn continues to work for Group IB and is still currently listed on the Russian version of their official website. Later, Group IB CEO Ilya Sachkov was arrested and detained by law enforcement and placed in prison, which has only led to more questions. It's worth considering that previously the company received funding of 5 million rubles from a Moscow-based Skolkovo Foundation, which was driven by the Russian government was used to build a high-tech accelerator and innovation complex for domestic startups. Later, the company signed an agreement with Rostec, a state-owned Russian corporation that was sanctioned by the U.S. government. According to numerous interviews of Ilya Sachkov, the company was founded by him and other Russian nationals, Dmitry Volkov, Alexander Pizemsky, and Igor Katkov, who currently moved to BI.Zone, a subsidiary of Sberbank, which was also recently sanctioned by the U.S. government. In 2013, Group IB was licensed by the Russian FSB, required to process state secret data. The license was used by the Moscow FSB department with registration number, whatever that is, which has now been validated by multiple public sources. According to the Russian business newspaper Kommersant, the company is owned by several entities tied to Andrei Romanenko, the former CEO of Kiwi, a Russian payment system, and Kirill Androzov, the former deputy chief of staff for Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. Androzov popped up in the Pandora Papers, and his surname has been previously mentioned in connection to investment funds registered in Singapore, Atlas Asset Management and Lang Capital Fund, and also Altera Capital, which is registered in Luxembourg. After some time had passed working in Russia, Group IB claimed to have moved its headquarters to Singapore, but continued to work in Russia and have offices in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Innopolis, a new economic area organized by the Russian government in Tatarstan to encourage business development. According to the mother of imprisoned Sachkov, the Russian Federation badly needs people like her son. In the recent personal letter addressed to Vladimir Putin in the context of current Russian-Ukrainian tensions, the former Group IB CEO is requesting his release from prison as his country, Russia, needs him especially now. The Open Source Security Foundation announced the release of the first version of a new tool dubbed Package Analysis to perform dynamic analysis of the packages uploaded to popular open source repositories. The project allowed the researchers to identify more than 200 malicious packages uploaded to PyPy and NPM by analyzing their behavior. The project also tracks dynamic changes in the behavior of the packages over time. Most of the malicious packages they detected are dependency, confusion, and typo squatting attacks. The packages that we found usually contain a simple script that runs during an install and calls home with a few details about the host. These packages are most likely the work of security researchers looking for bug bounties, since most are not exfiltrating meaningful data except the name of the machine or a username, and they make no attempt to disguise their behavior, concludes the announcement. Still, any one of these packages could have done far more to hurt the unfortunate victims who installed them, so package analysis provides a countermeasure to these kinds of attacks. Currently, the OpenSSF has only released an initial prototype version of the package analysis project. The U.S. Department of Treasury sanctioned the cryptocurrency mixer Blender.io used by the North Korea-linked Lazarus App Group to launder the funds stolen from Axie Infinity's Ronin Bridge. This is the first time ever Treasury is sanctioning a virtual currency mixer. Threat actors have stolen almost 625 million in Ethereum and U.S. dollar coin, or U.S. dollar pegged stablecoin, tokens from Axie Infinity's Ronin Network Bridge. The attack took place on March 23rd, but the cyber heist was discovered after a user was unable to withdraw 5,000 Ethereum. The Ronin network is an Ethereum-linked sidechain used for the blockchain game Axie Infinity. The attackers had stolen roughly 173,600 Ethereum and 25.5 million USDC. The Ronin Bridge and Katana DEX have been halted following the attack. The U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control blocked 45 Bitcoin addresses linked to Blender.io and 4 wallets associated with Lazarus Apt. Blender.io is a virtual currency mixer that operates on the Bitcoin blockchain to make transactions untrackable. Blender receives a variety of transactions and mixes them together before transmitting them to their ultimate destination. The mixers are essential components for cyber criminals that use them for money laundering. It was used to launder the funds stolen from DPRK's Axie Infinity, processing over 20.5 million in illicit proceeds. It has been estimated that Blender has helped transfer more than $500 million worth of Bitcoin since its creation in 2017. OFAC states that Blender was also used by several ransomware groups, including TrickBot, Conti, Ryok, Sod, Sudnakibi, and GanCrab. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Don't forget to ride!